That's the thing. You see, when I'm talking to you, I feel like there's this new wave hippie, this new age dude,
Cosmic,
just throwing this guy, and it's like, this is not new. This has always been a part of not just the Christian tradition, but every tradition in some way, shape, or form. Because it's getting at the mysteries of our life, the mysteries of being alive.
When life throws a challenge at you, one thing is certain: to find a resolution for every issue, every problem, for everybody, there's more than one way. Hello, I'm Whitney Ross, and with me as usual is Thom Rasnick. Glad to have you, Thom.
Great to be here. Thanks, Whitney.
And we're going to talk a little bit about a sermon Thom gave here at St. John's Cathedral in Knoxville. We're going to throw it back a little bit. There's a 364 out of 365 chance that it's probably not Christmas while you're watching this or listening to this. But we're going to go back to Christmas, and we're going to talk about a sermon that Thom shared on Christmas Eve a few years ago.
Great. That was a great one, if I recall.
It was a classic for sure.
Yeah, right.
It's definitely worth checking back into.
Oh my gosh.
So, Thom, you shared a video with the group that was gathered there that evening, and tell me a little bit about why you did that and why you chose the video that you did.
Okay, the reason I chose the video, the reason I showed the video was because I was trying to get to people's hearts. You know, I think of Christmas Eve and Christmas time as a time of emotional feeling and connection, family connection, and connecting with the people that you love. And I thought that showing a video was a good way to get at that, better than talking at that point. And I chose a specific video I did because it just illustrated all the things I just said. Connection and beauty and all the things that I think people are hoping to experience at Christmas. Mm-hmm.
Was it a Christmas video, or was it kind of the Jesus story, or what was it that you showed?
I mean, for me, it was a Christmas video.
Okay.
I mean, on the surface, I would have to say no, it's not a Christmas video. But for me, it was a Christmas video in the sense that it really, really illustrated, as I said, not only the emotional side and the feeling side, but it illustrated what for the Christian tradition has been how we get ready for Christmas, how we prepare, in a sense, to meet Christ.
Okay.
And I thought it really illustrated that well. It symbolized all that. Could you
share the story with us? Maybe we don't necessarily have the video clip, but could you kind of retell it in a way that we
I
could
can
get a feel
retell
for
it. And if I use this accent and it just annoys you, tell me, please, because it was somewhere in Eastern Europe. I'm just going to say like Poland. That's where it seemed to be from. And the video starts with a truck pulling up to a house, dropping off a package. Rings the doorbell, and the older man comes to the door, picks up the package as if he's expecting it, right? So he picks it up, he takes it into his kitchen, and he's got a little dog there with him the whole time, which is just kind of this cute little companion, and the dog follows him along, and he opens it up, and it's as if he's reading what he finds in the package to the dog.
Okay.
And he takes it out, and he says, and now this is my attempt to be him, okay?
Okay.
English for beginners. Pretty good?
Yeah.
Okay,
I
cool.
like it.
Okay, so English for beginners. So it's a book trying to teach him English.
Okay.
And so he sets about listening to words that are English, and then he goes about his life putting Post-it notes on things, for instance, like lamp or table or dog, and he puts
just kind of all around his
his house. He's going all around his house putting it on there, and it's funny. It's funny the way he does it. He goes about trying to figure out how he's going to learn this new language. Okay. And so if I take that into to the getting ready for Christmas. So he's preparing himself, and he's doing all that it takes in order to learn this new language, learn how to communicate in another way. And you don't really know why.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, why is he doing this? You know, at one point he's sitting in a bathtub and he's got a little rubber ducky.
Uh-huh.
And he looks at the little rubber duck and he says, "You are beautiful. You are perfect, just the way you are." Okay? So he's learning these new phrases, and it shows him on buses going to places, and all the while he's just repeating English phrases, despite what people think of him. And then eventually, it's the middle of the night, a taxi comes and picks him up, and he goes to the airport, and he flies on a plane, and he lands, and he gets on another plane, and the taxi from the airport takes him to a house, and he goes, and he's met by somebody at the door, which seems to be his son, and they embrace, and then he embraces his daughter-in-law, and then he walks into the house, and there's a light on kind of in the back room. They're in the living room, and there's a light on through a doorway, and this little girl comes walking around, and she peeks her little head out, and she's a little scared, and she doesn't know this guy. She doesn't know what to do. And he walks over to her, and he bends down, and he gets right at her level, and he says, "Hello, I'm your grandpa." And I thought, man, that is perfect. And it's perfect for all the ways that I hope I said before. It's perfect for the connection. It's perfect for the emotional tie. It's perfect. And then if we take it into the spiritual realm of getting ready to meet Christ, it's perfect for that as well.
Yeah. Kind of a non-traditional take on Christmas, but I definitely see, where it brings that message in. Definitely the spirit of what you were trying to create.
Yeah. So it's the spirit. Yeah, that's a great word, spirit. It's the spirit of Christmas rather than maybe what would be considered an actual Christmas message. That's why I kind of said at the beginning. For me, it was a Christmas video, but somebody else might not see it that way. Hopefully, after this podcast, you might see it that way. So it was. Say what you said again, because I'm lost for a second.
You're talking about that it was kind of a non-traditional way to share the story.
Yeah, so non-traditional in the sense of, in a traditional way, we would focus on Jesus and Jesus coming, and that's great. That's been is a beautiful message, and one that will continue to be told. But this video is getting more at the idea that Christ is something that we experience all the time in our lives through one another.
So I noticed a kind of a change in terminology there. We were
Right.
talking about Jesus, and then you switched to Christ. Is there a difference, or is there a reason you switched or used those terms differently?
Yeah, so there is a difference. For me, there is a difference. And for really lots of people within the Christian tradition, it's been the same thing. Jesus was a particular human being that lived at a particular time. And what people experienced in, through, and as Jesus is what we call Christ. So Christ, became how we understood Jesus. But Christ isn't his last name.
Yeah.
Okay? Christ is something that within the tradition has been a larger energy, a larger spiritual presence. People experience that in Jesus, in, through, and as Jesus. But Jesus himself said, "What I have, you will have. The spirit that's within me is within you, and you'll carry this on out into the world." And so I think what we experience in Jesus, we can experience in each other. One way to look at it, there's a guy named Richard Rohr, and I meant to bring his book, but his book is called The Universal Christ. And it's a very helpful book to read, to unpack more of what I'm talking about, what we're talking about right now. Okay? And then the universal Christ, one of the things that he says is the first incarnation that we see in the whole biblical story is what we call the earth, is what we might call creation. Because God's Spirit is poured into all creation. So one way to understand incarnation is that incarnation is the experience of Spirit in, through, and as matter. So Spirit as tree, Spirit as river, Spirit as you and me, manifesting that way. See what I'm getting at?
I do. Can we talk a little bit more about that? It starts to get a little beyond me a little bit as we kind of talk, as we bring in Spirit, and we've got Christ, we've said Jesus, we have all these different terms.
Right.
And maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's just the terminology or what I'm used to that is kind of a stumbling block there. But like when I think of incarnation, I immediately go to Jesus.
Right.
You know, I don't go back necessarily to creation, but you're talking about it prior to Jesus.
Right.
And a revelation of some kind to the world as the world prior to Jesus.
Yes, that's right. So, and that's been part of the Christian tradition really from the beginning. It just hasn't always been the dominant stream. Okay, so if we're going to go back to the beginning and the way that the Bible talks about in the beginning. Mm-hmm. Okay, so in the beginning, the Spirit of God is moving across the waters that's within creation. And then God says, let there be light. And God's word, God's breath is that Spirit, is that very Spirit. And that's what creates stuff. Okay, so it's a mythological story trying to get at that truth. And the truth is all of life is infused with Spirit. And it's a great, great mystery. It's a really great mystery to say that matter is Spirit manifesting, incarnating. So it's almost like if we want to take it into the human realm. Are you with me?
Yeah.
Okay, if I jump around too much, please tell me.
Okay.
Okay, so if we take it into the human realm, there's lots of ways you can see human beings. But there's a lot of times people will say, well, we're human beings having a spiritual experience. You ever heard that phrase? Human beings having a spiritual experience. But there's another line of thought that says, no, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. Okay? So Spirit is, another name for Spirit would be the invisible and life animating energy that makes up everything.
Okay.
Okay? And the ancient people, our ancestors would say, that's the Spirit we're talking about. That life animating presence is the Spirit we're talking about. So in that sense, God's not separate from us. Okay? So the first incarnation is everything we see.
So are you saying that God is in everything? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying God is in everything. God's Spirit, as we understand that, God's life animating energy is within all of life. And the indigenous people knew this well. They had their way to go about talking about it. And then other traditions have other ways to go about talking about it. And Christianity has its way. And it's what we're trying to get at right here, right now.
Yeah, and I think it's not a completely new idea to me, but it's fresh in a way that I don't hear it talked about that often. You know, it seems to be that we're sometimes more comfortable with the history than the mystery, you know, as far as kind of what happened, not the bigger piece of, like I think when you're talking about the video that you chose, it's really taking the story and expanding it.
Yes.
It's making it bigger. That can be that can be a positive thing for some people. Some people may take that as a threatening thing, or it may put them in a place of, I don't know what to do with this. That's not the story that I have heard.
Yeah.
So how did people react in the service?
Well, I mean, most people really got caught up in the video itself, and it was a real emotion. Just what I talked about. It was emotionally strong. It made a number of people cry. A lot of connection, I think, to their own family, their own people that were with them. But I'm not quite sure people would connect it to what I'm trying to connect it to.
Gotcha.
They might not have made that jump. I didn't hear anybody like all in all, I mean, by and large, who was upset that I didn't do like a more what we might call traditional Christmas sermon. Most people were really engaged with it, and I did it 5 times. So I got to see a lot of people. And but I'm not sure, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it, I'm not sure people made that connection.
Yeah.
Made the connection that for me, all his preparation was to meet this little girl. And for me, that little girl represents Christ. Okay? So another way to go at it, another way that traditions have tried to go at it. So I'm an Episcopal priest. I've been an Episcopal priest for 30 years. We do baptisms. And within our baptismal service, there's a part of the service that says, will you seek and serve Christ in all persons, loving your neighbor as yourself? But that first part is trying to get at what we're trying to get at here. Will you seek and serve Christ in all persons? So the idea is Christ is in all persons. Everybody that you will meet. And then if you take the idea of persons further beyond human beings, the way the indigenous people do, then everything's a person. They would call the trees the tree people. They would call the whales the whale people. They would, you know what I'm saying? So trying to give sacredness to everything. And unfortunately, what happened was we gave sacredness to one thing, and that was just Jesus. And that's true. It's just, as you just kind of said, there's more. There's so much more. There's so much more to God. There's so much more to us.
So what I think I'm hearing you say is that we experience that Christ in each other,
Yes,
in
that's
meeting each other. What is that felt like, or how have you experienced that?
Well, how I experience it best with other people is when we can sit unhurried, unrushed, and just really dig in to each other's story. Sit and listen and talk and share and be together. Sometimes there's more talk, sometimes there's less talk. I think about it like with my family. So I think about it, most people when they're at Christmas, not everybody, but most people are going to spend it with people in their family. And that's a challenge in and of itself, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
One, I don't want to pretend like that's not difficult sometimes, because it can be difficult.
Right.
But I remember one Christmas time, we were, usually I'm really tired because we do midnight service and don't get home till about 2:00 or so. And when my kids were little, I could go about trying to I would have to go, put something together, which is like not my forte. So, a lot of times I wasn't going to bed till 4 a.m. or something like that. And I remember, my kids were pretty respectful of that, but, you can only wait as long as you can wait when you're a kid.
Sure.
And my kids coming in around 6 or so and just so excited and so happy. And we went out into the area the living room area where the tree was, and I started a fire, and everybody was sitting around. And for one moment, just for a second, I think one of my children was putting gifts out. Everybody does that different, but he was putting gifts in front of everybody if it was your gift, right? Just to just to organize it, and made some coffee, and I was just sitting there, and the fire's going, and I just looked across at Cindy, my wife, and at my kids, and I thought, God, this is so unbelievable that I get to just be here, right now, with you all. And it was such a beautiful feeling. And there was such a sacredness. Like I said, there was a sacredness in the moment, because it was beyond them as my family. They were more than that at that moment. And then my mother-in-law came out, and it was just terrible after that. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, family.
I'm just kidding. Kidding, Barbara. No. No, but it was just a moment, you know what I mean? I think in a sense we can only stay in that place for a moment. We wouldn't be able to do anything.
Too real.
Yeah, it was so powerful, so connecting. And then, what really happened was we started opening our gifts, and then everybody, and it was back to just kind of normal life. But I had that glimpse, I had that glimpse of, God, we're so much more.
And I think, thinking about that story, thinking about the video that you showed, I think there's so many times that we talk about Jesus without talking about Jesus. Does that make sense? I mean, there are times when we feel that spirit, we feel that energy without ever mentioning what we call it, or maybe putting that label on it, I guess. And so for me, it's comforting sometimes to know that it is bigger than just the story or the name or the term or the specific day or the service. That starts to help me feel that in other people at other times, all the times, all things. It helps me get there, I guess.
Yeah. It's almost like those things can help get you ready for the bigger thing outside of itself, which is a great way to think about, church or a service or whatever it is. It's here to feed us so that we can go out and see it. And the it is that spiritual presence, that active, life-giving energy that's within us and all around us all the time, that people within the Christian tradition tried to give names to. All right, and I think that's why it's so important to separate Jesus from Christ. I think that's why the guy in his book, The Universal Christ, did that. It's because if we keep focusing so much on Jesus and keep that energy, that spiritual energy, just on Jesus, then we will miss it on everybody else. And we'll just keep waiting for him to come back. And you see, that's why he separated, said the thing, Christ isn't Jesus' last name. There's Jesus the person, and there's Christ. That's a active spiritual presence that's been with us since the beginning of everything.
There's a quote that you use when you preach before the sermons. Would you share that? Because I think, it fits right along with this message and what you're...
Yeah, and it's why I use it. It's why I use it. I try to say it every day, and I recognize that what we're talking about isn't what we talk about most of the time. I recognize this isn't the way that we go about this stuff usually. What I'm saying is what you said before, it's not new.
Yeah.
So the quote comes from a 13th century Catholic priest, and his name became Meister Eckhart. And he was a pastor of a church, and he was in the Dominican order, so he did stuff within the Dominican order of the Catholic world. And he wrote this, and it goes, "Apprehend God in all things, for God is in all things. Every single creature is filled with God and is a book about God." To try to get at what we're trying to get at. This mystery of spirit in, through, and as matter that we're walking through and living in all of the time. And he goes on to say, if you just took a look at a caterpillar, kind of like what a scientist would do, and just watched it for a whole day, he would say, that would tell you more about God than all the books you could read.
Interesting.
Yeah. And this is the 13th, 14th century,
Yeah.
So that's the thing. You see, when I'm talking to you, I feel like there's this new wave hippie, this new age dude,
Cosmic
just
kind of
throwing this
what-
guy, he just, and it's like, this is not new. This has always been a part of not just the Christian tradition, but every tradition in some way, shape, or form. Because it's getting at the mysteries of our life, the mysteries of being alive.
And I think about what a challenge that is to think about in all things,
Yeah.
in all people, and to think about if we were to live that, that's going to radically change the way we live and the way we interact with the people around us.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's not just
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, it's
what would it
huge.
do? What would you? How would you see that? I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I mean, and you could think about it. But what would you do if what would I do if I really believe that? How would I really treat the people who I'm around?
and I think about how many people I pass without even thinking about.
Yeah.
How many people, maybe even sometimes I'm in a conversation with and my head's somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I think about what am I missing because of that, because of my own focus or inattention or distraction.
Yeah.
What am I missing that's right there in front of me?
Yeah. And the thing about that video and about Christmas, once again, is because it is so hard to do that all the time. It's okay. So here's a specific time, right? We're gonna set aside this specific time where we really celebrate this.
Right.
And we celebrate it because people throughout the centuries recognize, okay, if I can see it in Jesus, then maybe I can see it in my neighbor. If I can see the Christ in, through, and as Jesus, maybe I can see it in, through, and as me. Maybe I can see it in, through, and as you.
So, Thom, we've been talking about these concepts, and they're pretty big. I mean, it's a lifetime's worth of learning and walking through to try to make sense of these.
Yeah.
How do we take something that's this big and really bring it into that everyday life, that day-to-day, go to work, go to school, raising your kids, the stage that you're in? How does it really intersect with that?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is that, for me anyway, is that it would slow us down a little bit and help us to pay attention to what's going on more often. Now, maybe that's just me. A lot of times, I have in my own head things that I've got to get done, and so I just rush past things.
Yeah.
But fortunately, I didn't rush past this, and I was in a parking lot. I think it was Costco or some godforsaken place like that. And no offense, Costco, but I was in the parking lot, and I looked over to my left as I was walking up to the store, and I saw something going on, and so I stopped. And there were these 3 young African American guys. I'd say they were in their teens to maybe early 20s. And they were standing around this car, it looked like a van or something like that. And there were these 2 older white people who were kind of in the middle of them. And so I'm watching what's going on, and I see this one guy is holding up, one of the African American young men is holding up the white woman. I noticed she had just gotten off her walker, taken her hands off her walker, and he's holding her up. And I couldn't really hear what he was saying, but you could tell he was talking to her, and he was smiling. And he held her up and he held her up. And so I walked a little closer because I really wanted to hear, what was going on. And he got her into the car and he put her down and he goes, there you go, Mom. And then her husband was standing there the whole time and he just kept saying, thank you so much, thank you so much. She's getting harder to take care of. It's harder for me to hold on to her. And then the two other guys just kind of helped. He was a little bit more mobile, and so he could make his way around, but they kind of helped him around. And the whole time those guys were going, you guys have a great day. You take care of yourself. And it was such a beautiful scene. And I thought, yeah, there's 3 young men who really paid attention.
Yeah.
Who really said, these people are worth something. And, they're not to put anybody down, me included. I probably would have went right past because I had so many other things on my mind. But they didn't. They saw it. And it was a sacred moment.
Well, and you think about it because they obviously impacted her.
Yeah.
And her husband.
Yeah.
But it impacted you too.
It did.
To the point, and even in sharing that, you've impacted me.
Yeah.
With that moment. That was a simple action, but it took some intention.
Yes. And once again, it takes a paying attention and a slowing down and a not rushing through this life because there's so much in it to see. Yeah, it's like another way to think of it is don't take any day for granted. Look at the sky. Take a look at the trees. Slow down a little bit. Okay, I know we all have a lot to do. And we have a lot of distractions. Right? We have phones that pull us away. We have everything that pulls us away from the present moment. Right? Those young men were in that moment with those 2 older people. And those 2 older people were in that moment with those young men. And so the implications of all this big, heady stuff that we're talking about is be present in your life.
Where you are.
Where you are.
Yeah.
Watch. Stay open. See the beauty. You're never going to get another day exactly like this day.
Yeah. And it's so easy to be thinking either beyond this day to something you're looking forward to, or maybe back to something that meant something to you in the past, a memory.
Yes.
Because maybe that's easier to bring up than to stop and actually look at today.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes. And it is. I think a lot of us do that.
Yeah.
Spend time in the past ruminating about either great things or things we wish we'd done differently, or hoping that the future is better than what we've got right now. Or worrying that it's not going to be better. But the implications of that spirit is in matter, and it is in us, and it is in all that we meet. Christ is in us and in all whom we meet. Is pay attention. Stay where you are. Don't rush through your life.
Yeah. And it brings me back to your story at the beginning. You think about just the simple act of writing down the words on the Post-its and just placing them around where he was, and the things in his house, and just the patience to learn a new language is huge. It's so difficult to try to do that.
Yes, it is.
But the way that he did that, because he had an expectation, there was something he was preparing for, like you said, and all of that time kind of came to fruition in that moment when he got to speak to her in a way that she could understand.
Yes. And even though he was preparing, he was in each moment.
Right.
As he was writing down dog and table, and he was right there. That's the most practical implications of this that I can even think of, is you've been given this day. Pay attention. Not like pay attention, bony finger, I'm going to get you if you don't.
Yeah.
But because what a gift. And you know, even some of the hard things can end up being a gift.
So as we kind of wrap this up, for those of you listening, we'd love to hear what you think as you have heard the conversation and as you think about these concepts yourself. We'd love to have your input. We'd love for you to share that, and we'd like to be able to receive those and talk about those in the future. So please reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you.
And I have something that I suppose it's a challenge for you and for all those who are listening. It's kind of twofold. First would be take some time wherever you can find some quiet, some space. Maybe it's outside somewhere, maybe it's taking a walk, maybe it's sitting down, and really try to experience the reality of Christ in you. That you carry Christ. That you carry Christ in your life. That who and what you are is sacred. And find a way to experience that in and through and as yourself. And then, when you do that, if you can do that, start looking around. Maybe you'll find yourself in a parking lot somewhere sometime. Maybe some person will be in need and you'll be the one there. And you'll be the one who sees. And you'll recognize the Christ in them just as you recognize the Christ in yourself.
Thanks, Thom.
Yeah, bet. Thank you for listening to this episode of the More Than One Way podcast, brought to you by the Center for Spiritual Practice in Knoxville, Tennessee. We really appreciate your time and would love to hear your feedback. You can reach us by emailing hello@morethanonewaypod.com, or you can connect with us on social media using the handle @morethanonewaypod. If you found this episode helpful, we hope that you'll share it with your friends, with your family, with people you work with all the people who you know. Thank you and take care.